Modern gaming just seems to get worse and worse, but when you think you've finally seen the bottom, you can always count on Sony to develop new ways to reach unseen depths of enshittification. And let me tell you, the best part about being a gaming unk is watching everything I loved about console gaming just go down in flames, absolutely toasted.
How does it feel to have lived long enough to see all of your favorite franchises go down in flames?
Feels great.
Sony PlayStation has announced that they will cease physical disc production in January 2028 for their new games, and this essentially confirms that the upcoming PlayStation 6 will be a digital-only DRM box. And I absolutely hate the trend of digital-only consoles for many reasons. To start with, these boxes are usually the underpowered version of the full console, and they become outmoded very quickly. And of course, because you can't put discs in them, they lose all their resale value and essentially just become useless boxes of obsolete technology within a few years, which is, of course, actually what Sony and Xbox want with these consoles. The obvious reason for this is so that Sony can undercut the resale market. Because one of the biggest non-issues that gaming publishers see in gaming is the resale market, because they seem to think that people who buy used games are actually spending capital that they would have used on new games, when more often than not, the people who buy used games can't afford new games, and so they make this purchase decision more based on their wallet's capacity. But don't tell that to stock investors, because the line must continue to go up, and that is 100% what this is all about. I refer to this post by Dustin Furman because he went through the trouble of comparing physical editions of current PlayStation games to their digital sales prices. As we can see here, we have Astrobot PS5 for $39 if you get it from Amazon. Still $60 on the Sony store today. Moving on to the next, we have God of War Ragnarok. This is almost a 4-year-old game. $32 on Amazon. $70 on PlayStation. And this is what's also very sinister, because they're trying to bump up the average price of games. And let's be real, the average price of games is going to go up now that GTA 6 has been confirmed at $80. It's going to be very important for you as an informed customer to just not buy games that you don't think are worth it. You have to show these gaming publishers that $80 is not the new threshold. Only GTA gets to be that expensive. Moving on, we got Gran Turismo 7. This is a pretty old game, actually. $38, $70 on Sony PS5. And this really illustrates the problem with these closed ecosystems. This really ties into the stop killing games model, but also the new Steam machine coming out, which I think when we first saw the prices for the Steam machine, it was about $1,050, the full version being about $1,400. It was a bit laughable at the time, but with recent announcements of price increases to Xbox, that's going to bring the single terabyte Series X up to $850. I have a Series X sitting next to me. Could you believe I paid $450 for this freaking thing? And now it's nearly double the price only 3 years later. Every video you've ever seen on this channel with gameplay is made off of that box. It's absolutely insane how fast gaming has become a premium hobby, when it really used to be such a casual hobby. Within the 2000s, it reached critical mass, truly because of its affordability. Finishing off with The Last of Us Part 1 remastered. This is, how many times can you remaster a game and still charge full price for it? Because on the Sony PlayStation Store, they're charging $70 for a game that is legitimately 15 years old. And this is what Sony wants for your future as a gamer. They don't want the low-level customer who can only buy 1 or 2 games a year. They want rich people. Sony is trying to turn themselves into the Apple of gaming, and I'm actually the more news that comes out in 2026, I'm actually very happy that Valve is putting itself in the console market, because the open ecosystem of the PC, the sales that Steam has are so competitive compared to this. I actually think there's a valid reason to go in on the Steam machine now. I was laughing at first, but all the news that's come out since the announcement has really changed my mind. Now, PlayStation says that this is in response to shifting trends in consumer preference. New games released on PlayStation Store and at retailers in digital-only format. I can actually regale a story about this because I play Marathon in this channel. I actually, because I'm a dummy who lives in the past, decided to go into a GameStop and attempt to get a physical copy of Marathon, only to be told that physical copies of Marathon don't exist. And I mean, of course they don't exist because this game is a live service, right? It's hosted by Bungie. You're paying $40, not a premium $80 to get in. But it still kind of grinded my gears that I can't have even a box of Marathon sitting on my shelf. Because as a physical collector, someone who's collected games since I was a kid, really in the 90s, it's become a habit. And the fact that I can pick up an old game off my shelf, I mean, let me go grab a couple games right now. I grabbed two in particular because I think they're really good at illustrating how fast the situation has changed in gaming culture. I got Doom 2016, and I got Kingdom Hearts, which I believe came out 2019, 2020? Actually, this might have been a little bit older. This might have been 2018. But the point is, these two games, physical disc, hard copy, I can open this thing up. You know, it has some downloadable codes in it, but the fact that I could put this thing into my console and play it right now is so important to me as a gamer. It's not that publishers don't know that we care about this aspect of the game, it's that they don't care that we care about this aspect of the game. They really seek this closed ecosystem right now. And let's consider too, Sony owns the Blu-ray. Sony created the Blu-ray. Every Blu-ray that exists is licensed through them, and of course, if you make a Blu-ray, you're in a roundabout fashion paying Sony for their technology. There's absolutely no reason that Sony couldn't be making these Blu-rays for these games, even to a limited quantity, even if they were just direct order. And it's an even bigger issue nowadays in the AI data center era, where these huge conglomerates are eating up all the PC parts. They're eating up all the RAM, the memory cards. And so this move is like insult to injury, because now you're forcing gamers to enter the SSD market, the storage drive market, when it's at its most inflated, its most pricey. This is the least customer-friendly move you could possibly do. And of course, we have to draw it back to the PlayStation 4, right? Because the whole thing about the Xbox One versus PlayStation 4 was that Xbox tried to do this. And maybe the problem with Microsoft and Xbox is that they tried to do these things too early. They did Game Pass very early. They had Xbox Live in the early 2000s. And then of course they tried to go digital only, no ability to trade games with your friends, way before it was appropriate. 10 years ago, 15 years ago at this point. And I cannot understate my disdain for Jim Ryan and what he did to Sony over the course of his tenure, how he really shifted the mission focus and attitude, and there's no real other word for it but Americanized. He took Sony, who was a distinctly Japanese company in practice and culture, and Americanized it into this live service monstrosity where the good things they produce are absolutely incidental. I know people like to rag on Xbox for not having games, but let's be honest, Xbox puts out a lot of AA games that are pretty high quality. Your Sea of Thieves, your State of Decays, your Groundeds, and Sony is lucky to get one $500 million cinematic travesty every single year. And half the time, that game is just a remaster of an old game. I'm not saying Xbox is perfect, but my hate for Sony has definitely outpaced my hate for Microsoft and Xbox. Specifically Xbox. Microsoft, actually, not a fan. Related to Sony dropping the discs, they're also going to make changes to the PlayStation 3 and PS Vita stores, which are actually still open and you can make purchases through them, but that will only be till the end of this year, as they're going to start closing them in select markets in August 2026, with full closure of the PlayStation 3 and Vita stores in July 2027. And this may not seem like the biggest thing, but this all falls in line with Sony's current business plan to remaster old games and sell them at full price like they're brand new games, and with their new discless console in the future, never have reasonable sales. You're essentially paying full price for a Sony game forever. That is the dream of these publishing studios. That is the only feasible way they can really make the line go up in the current era, now that they've priced people out of the hardware market. And I mean, if we're being honest, the amount of people still buying stuff on a PlayStation 3 or PlayStation Vita is probably very minimal. But that also means the cost of upkeep for the store is also very minimal. It's not as though they're actively updating these titles or messing around with the marketplace. Have no doubt in your mind, this is just another way for Sony to close off their ecosystem in a way that's going to be very counter to Valve and the Steam machine and the Steam network. Look at me, it sounds like I'm selling the Steam machine at this point, but man, this news really has changed my opinion. And I'll connect this to an article out of Windows Central because, you know, Windows Central, it has Windows in the name. It's obviously going to be more Microsoft centric, trying to glaze them. But later in the article, as it discusses the dropping of disk drives and the removal of Blu-ray productions, this line right here, as for Project Helix, which is the code name for Microsoft's next console, our sources have suggested that Microsoft's next-gen console will drop the disk drive too. And there is news rumblings within the Xbox world that there's going to be massive layoffs, studio closures. Asha Sharna, the new CEO, has been given a mandate from above from Microsoft to make the Xbox division profitable. And that's going to come with a lot of heads rolling, a lot of blood in the streets. But it also means they're going to have to follow a similar model to Sony and PlayStation. They're going to have to reinvigorate their core demographic. They're going to have to sell themselves as a premium console. They're going to have to drive up the prices of their software and attempt to kill the resale market. These are predictions that I think are going to bear fruit over the next 4 years, so subscribe. I'm going to be covering all this as it happens in the future. But since we've discussed the business aspects of this, I want to talk about more sinister things at play. I want to talk about the PlayStation C-bomb, which you may not have heard about. Quickly described here, in 2021, it was discovered that a dead internal clock battery would render a console unplayable. Sony eventually released firmware updates for the PlayStation 4 and PlayStation 5 that defused the bomb, but essentially what would happen was that the dead CMOS battery would lock a player out of their digital and physical game libraries, and they wouldn't be able to detach them from the console and would thereby lose access to their games. Now, this was discovered by a pretty underrated figure in the gaming preservation space, Hikikomori Media. I credit all this to him, and it even resurged in 2026 when, following system updates, a newly introduced DRM policy for PSN digital purchases requires an online check-in every 30 days. And this is just another aspect of them chaining you to the ecosystem. You don't even get to download the game to the console and then just play the console offline. You have to check in at Sony headquarters every so often, so they make sure you haven't done anything untoward with the game, that you haven't modified any files, that you haven't traded games with anyone, that you haven't suddenly injected new games onto your hard drive. All this hall monitor nanny stuff they're trying to do to just squeeze pennies out of every single customer they possibly can. And of course, just made worse by the hardware manufacturing issues of the modern era, where everything is more expensive, from your food to your gas to your housing, your light bill. And I want to put the fear of God into you when it comes to Sony, because do not think your purchases are safe if you make them on a Sony platform, because within this same week, Sony announced the deletion of over 500 purchased movies from PlayStation Store accounts, and it's the ultimate warning to buy Blu-rays, right? So they say. But of course, Sony ain't going to be putting their games on Blu-ray, and it's entirely possible in the future that they may not be putting their movies on Blu-ray as well. Let's continue to look forward. Because the list of movies here is actually important. It features some pretty, reputed pieces of cinema. Terminator 2, Judgment Day, the Rambo movies. This is an end of a licensing agreement between Sony and Studio Canal. And without getting too deep in the thick, the licensing deals within video games are one of the most egregious aspects of gaming when it comes to customer service. Let's draw ourselves to GTA 6, which recently announced an $80 basic price point, $100 Ultimate Edition, but no physical disc. Some people are theorizing that to avoid leaks, there won't be a physical disc until after the actual drop date of the game. I think it's pretty much confirmed that it's just going to be a box with a digital code in it, if they even bother to make a box. But Grand Theft Auto is perhaps one of the most notorious franchises for licensing deals retroactively affecting the game. GTA 5 has been out for about 15 years now, and there's so many things that have been removed from that game, mostly music, because of the expiration of licensing deals. And even with Grand Theft Auto 4, unless you take the time to play Grand Theft Auto 4 on an Xbox 360 offline, you're gonna immediately get cursed with an update, and that update is gonna remove many of the songs that actually make the GTA 4 experience so compelling, in my opinion. This same thing is constantly happening with games you love, and you probably don't even notice. Have you ever seen like an 8 to 10 year old game just get an update out of nowhere that's a couple hundred megabytes? That's probably them removing shit from the game you bought. But regardless of how we feel about all this, the trends are going to continue moving forward, because reports around Grand Theft Auto 6 show it has surpassed 40 million, perhaps reached 50 million pre-orders within a week of it being announced. And it's generated $3 to $4 billion without an actual shred of gameplay, without anything tangible to how it's going to play, because people have so much faith in the product. I think the Rockstar lesson here is that customer goodwill is something that you cannot recreate, and Rockstar, to their credit, they have a lot of customer goodwill. The people who play Grand Theft Auto so excessively are absolutely satisfied with what they're playing, and that's borne out in this 4 billion revenue. I mean, the title of the video it's referencing is so apt. GTA 6 may be the biggest launch in entertainment history, because this game is going to surpass everything in entertainment. It's going to be bigger than Endgame. It's going to be the biggest thing in gaming for the next 5 to 10 years. I've said this before on the channel, and I'm going to continue to say it again and again and again. It is Grand Theft Auto's world, and we just live in it, trying to get a piece of the pie. But really, that's all I have for this video. It was mostly about trends in the future of gaming, how we have to handle this as customers if we actually want to get our value from video games. And I want to know in the comments, what console are you looking at in the future? Because I do consider the Steam Machine a console. It's meant to be put in your living room, connected to your television, played with the controller. It's made for the couch gamer demographic, for sure. And of course, like and subscribe for more gaming commentaries like this in the future.